you talked about timing, and we can use shipping as an analogy because it's fascinating that you can have the right knowledge, but if you have the wrong timing, it doesn't really matter. You will lose a lot of money. So how do you look at those concepts where you have luck and skill and how they need to act together and be perfectly matched in order to get the return on the investment or your time even?
Well, for me, it's fairly simple. I mean, I have observed over a long life that most businesses tend to have cycles. Real estate, banking, stocks, do you take it? There are cycles everywhere. And thanks God, that's good. That means you can make money. And that means in, out, long, short, it's all that matters. You get in when the cycles are on the low side, you get out when cycles are on the upper side. But then we come back to your question. You don't ever try to hit the very top of the cycle. You get out when you feel you've done a reasonable deal. And don't be greedy. A friend of mine told me that the market can take bulls and bears, but it cannot take pigs. So be happy with a little bit of profit. You could sit it out perhaps and make more profit, but then it's very easy to go over the top and you are falling very steeply into the valley. So that's not good.
It's an excellent point.
So in other words, I think that one of the worst things that can happen to many of us is we are too greedy. Now let me just add on a little bit. If you take most areas, you go in, make a commitment, make an investment. Obviously, that investment, not obviously, but if you can, that investment should be of a certain size if you believe in it. Then, when the should we say things hopefully go up, then you sell some of it and keep the rest, which is paid for already, and you have a ride for free. Then you can, of course, afford to speculate a little bit more as to when you get out, because the investment has already been paid for. And also, by the way, many of us, certainly me, make bad mistakes. It turns out not to go up at all, but it just goes further down. Then get out immediately. Jump ship. Don't sit and wait. Take a small loss and don't lose sleep over that.
I think the concept of greed is very important because obviously you've written several books, or I mean, several is an understatement, but also books and papers, etc. But there is clear research that, happiness isn't necessarily linked to the next million you make, right? No. And given that you are in your position, can you also just clarify that hypothesis that people need to know that extra million doesn't mean that you get happier necessarily, at least?
Well, I really don't have. I'm not a theologist, or I'm not a occupational psychologist dealing with things like that. But for me, at least, I think happiness seems to have to do with diversity. I'm happy because I am partly doing research. I have written more than 30 books and more than 150 articles in my life. I'm happy doing that. And I'm happy doing my investments. And I'm happy doing art collection. So I think it's a combination of those things that makes sense to me and makes me happy. But of course, I'm not necessarily happy making a good buck when I'm investing, but it's a sense of, should we say, feeling that you are able to do things, which makes me happy. And that is the same feeling I have when I'm collecting art. I'm able to do it. I am able to spot what I see as good art, and it turns out to be good choices, most of it. You can see it somewhere in my back here. And it's certainly been a good business, that too.
This is great, by the way. The stories are spectacular. So, I mean, just before we go on, like the feedback I'm getting from the viewers is that they love, the personal reflections tied with academic perspective. And I think you have a great balance in doing both at the same time.
Well, I happen to believe that this is very important, and I have to say that in my network of people that I run into, I've seen very few that are both relatively okay academically and relatively okay business-wise. And in that sense, in all modesty, I may be quite unique in that sense. And I think, to me, that has been a major factor. I mean, my ability to do business has improved because of my academic inklings, and vice versa. I could never, I think, have had a chance to kind of do good academic work if I didn't have the background in business. So this is a positive reality, in stark contrast to isolating oneself as an academician in an ivory tower and just neglecting the reality around. Now, that brings us to leadership. I think that in the Nordic areas, Norway, perhaps more than anything, this kind of bottom-up thinking is that, you lead by involving the organization. The issue of who's at the top is less important. If you contrast that with what you see, say, many hierarchical countries, the US, for instance, you see quite heavy leadership from the top, the head of General Electric, head of General Motors, bang, 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 their word is a law. But again, as you see, neither Norwegian business nor these old US firms have done particularly well. In fact, you've obviously seen that GM and GE are bankrupt or reorganized, and the winners now are the Amazon.coms, etc., etc. So what I think is leadership now is to understand how to blend top down and bottom up in a good way. And to me, a good example of that would be, for instance, Nestle here in Switzerland, where you have clearly a person at the top, Mark Schneider. At the same time, Nestle is worldwide, and the people from China, people from the US, people from Argentina, they have access to the leadership cabal of Nestle in a bottom-up sense. So you have, in a sense, a regional voice in all of this, which makes this blend a reality. You see the people from the regions blending up with the people from the center, and that becomes it. So this is in stark contrast to, should we say, a Norwegian culture. You have the local culture from the bottom ups, blending with the headquarter culture from where the company happens to be domiciled, the headquarter is. So it's very, very difficult to. I used to be fairly centrally involved in Norsk Hydro before it was split up. The problem was that Norsk Hydro was kind of a Norwegian culture worldwide. What we needed was local cultures blending with the Oslo culture, local cultures blending with the headquarter culture. And to find that ability to, should we say, respect the local cultures while still recognizing that you need a top-down culture, you need a boss, a good boss after all, but it needs to be a network-oriented boss rather than a, should we say, dictatorial boss. That blend that's modern leadership right now.